Dr. Laz here, and thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video where I really go into a deeper explanation of the three categories of acute low back pain that I covered in my other videos. Here I'm going to dive into exactly what is happening, how this occurred and the causes, and why the exercises I've given are so important and helpful. I think this information is critical to helping you understand your condition more thoroughly because whether you realize it or not, if you have experienced severe low back pain, you now have a permanent weakness in your spine, and you need to know exactly how, or I recommend you know or are familiar with how to look after your spine for the rest of your life, because that's what you're going to need to do. So, what exactly is happening? Simply, you have, whether it's a category 1, 2, or 3, you have a tear or a sprain in one or a few of the joints in your low back. It could be the disc, it could be the facet joint or the sacroiliac joint, which are all located in the low back. You may also have a sprain or a strain or tear of some of the surrounding soft tissue, which could be the tendons and muscles in the region. Regardless, there's a sprain, and usually accompanied by inflammation and swelling, which is what is causing most of your pain. Think of it like an open wound. I often describe it that way, like a cut. You have a wound in these joints or muscles or soft tissue, and it is causing the pain and inflammation that you're experiencing. How did this occur? There's really two major mechanisms of injury. The first one is the most obvious, where you had some kind of significant trauma. Maybe you fell, maybe you're in a car accident, maybe you were in a sporting accident, or maybe perhaps lifting something very heavy, let's say over 20 kilograms, something significant for the average person. That is an obvious mechanism of injury, and I won't spend much time explaining that because that causes the direct tear or the sprain. However, the other mechanism of injury is actually probably the more common one that I encounter, and that is caused from an insignificant or unknown source. So the typical scenario is you may have woken up with this low back pain, or you just bent down to put your shoes on or your pants and your back went out. You felt an instant stab of pain. Many people don't even know what caused it. They just wake up with pain, or the pain just starts seemingly out of the blue. This is the area where I want to spend a little bit more time explaining, because usually there's more confusion arising out of this scenario. So for this to happen, for you to experience significant low back pain from an insignificant event, that is a scenario where we call that was the final straw that broke your back. What that means is that you have had a build-up of a problem that you weren't aware of, and whatever you did, it didn't take much to push you over the edge. And that is, I think, a much more risky scenario, because this person, whether that's you or somebody else, has been totally unaware of the signs that your body has been giving you before this event happened. And there are always warning signs. It's just that most people either ignore them or are totally unaware of them. But there's a gradual build-up of pressure in your low back, and then all it takes is you putting your pants on, bending down, sneezing, and your back, you experience a tear in your low back. What usually needs to happen for this scenario to occur is, the way I explain it is, there is an accumulation of different types of stress over your lifetime. Usually by the time something like this occurs, where you put your shoes on and you tear your low back, there has been years of built up stress in your spine for that to occur. And so I want to help you understand what has been going on so that you can avoid this from happening in the future. But whenever I talk about stress, I'm really talking about the chemical, physical, and emotional stressors in your environment. And you'll hear me talk about these often, but the reason I always come back to that is because everything comes back to that. Whenever you're talking about a loss of health or well-being, whether it's your spine or your general well-being, it always comes back to these three factors, the stressors in your environment. Some of the most common ones regarding your low back are going to be the physical stressors will be old injuries since childhood, since birth. Because once you injure a joint, it will be permanently weakened. It will never be as strong as the original tissue. So you've probably accumulated a number of injuries, some more severe, some less severe. You may or may not remember them since childhood. All these injuries, they accumulate and they have an effect on the joints and the structure of your low back. So you've accumulated these injuries, and then on top of that, as you become older, generally you start to sit a lot more, and there's essentially less and less movement in your low back, which contributes to further weakening of the structures of your low back. On top of that, you may have the typical emotional stresses of dealing with your relationship, work, family, etc. So there's the emotional stresses on top of that. The emotional stress creates a lot of tension and restriction of movement. On top of these old injuries, and perhaps there is chemical toxins as well, whether it's your diet, poor diet, dietary choices, or simply environmental toxins. But all of these accumulate literally over your lifetime and weaken your low back, predisposing you to a situation where all it takes is for you to sneeze or put your pants on and you tear the disc or the joint in your low back. So these are the factors that you need to be aware of. And throughout your life, you would have had little warning signs. It may have been a stiffness, a dull ache at the end of the day, maybe waking up a little bit stiff, but you would have had warning signs that this low back problem is growing, and unfortunately you probably ignored them or didn't realize they were happening, and that's what happened, or what eventuated in the end. At the end of the day, all these different stressors, they are limiting movement in the joints of your spine, and that is really creating the pattern of deterioration and weakening in your spine. It all comes back to movement when we talk about the spine. And so now you've torn the joint because of this buildup of stiffness and tension and stress in that region. You've torn the joint, and now you have this gaping open wound in your joint. So the reason I give the exercises that I do is because simply we are trying to create a healthy amount of movement in those joints. That movement is what's going to help restore the ideal function in that region. It's going to help reduce some of the pain, or a lot of the pain that you're experiencing, because movement, we know, helps to numb pain. Movement helps to reduce pain, which is why when you bang your thumb with a hammer, you instantly shake it, you rub it, you move it, you create movement, and that naturally helps to tone down some of the pain. Movement also helps to decrease the inflammation. There's a buildup of pressure and fluid around that joint, and movement helps to pump it out, literally flush it out, giving you more comfort and relief. One other really important thing that movement does is it improves your brain's awareness of that joint and the surrounding soft tissue and musculature. What this means is the brain is better able to coordinate that area and the surrounding joints, which means less risk of further injury down the track. And that's a massive component of chiropractic and why movement is so vital. So this is why these movements are very, very important, and they all contribute to creating a better healing environment. Really what you're trying to do when you have this wound and this sprain is you're trying to create the best healing environment and over time to strengthen and to help that wound to heal. The last thing you want to do is to reopen and re-damage the wound, which is what happens if you don't know exactly what to do and you create the wrong types of movements or the wrong types of postures, and you constantly keep reopening and re-aggravating that wound. That's one of the main reasons why I've created those three category videos because I see it all the time in practice. People don't know what the do's and don'ts are, and they keep re-aggravating that wound and causing more and more pain and prolonged pain. If you get this pattern and scenario right, you can, in many cases, within hours, but in more severe, significant instances, within hours and days, you can create significant improvement in your pain and in your prognosis. Because as you create that correct healing environment, your body has the best efficiency in helping heal that wound as best as it can, and that means less pain and less discomfort for you. I hope you found this information helpful. If I've missed anything or if I haven't covered everything, please leave some feedback, leave some questions or comments below. I'm happy to create more videos to answer more specific questions if there is a demand for it. This is Dr. Laz. Keep moving.